In the Yoga aphorisms, Patanjali teaches that we are capable of reaching a state of awareness in which we can perform miracles. He counsels us to be unafraid of transcending the limitations imposed upon us by the material world. Patanjali's words caused me to truly think of myself as capable of living at a much higher level than I had ever even considered before. I felt urged to go beyond traditional ideas, which acted as obstacles to my union with God. Patanjali offered hundreds of specific suggestions and practices to reach the oneness or union with God, which he called yoga. Here are 5 aphorisms that can help you to gain access to your spiritual answers. I have arranged these 5 major themes in a way that I found useful for myself, and I trust will be helpful to you. The first aphorism: the central act of ignorance is false identification. Patanjali describes ignorance as a basic misunderstanding of one's real nature. When we identify ourselves as our name or our title, our body, our possessions, achievements, or reputation, we are denying our true identity. What we are exploring here is ignorance defined as falsely identifying oneself as only of the material, ego-based world. Replace that false identification with imagining yourself eternally connected to a divine source. With this new identification comes an inner resolve to reorient yourself when faced with a problem. The spiritual journey does not consist in arriving at a new destination where a person gains what he did not have or becomes what he was not. It consists in the dissipation of his ignorance concerning himself and life, and the gradual growing of that understanding which begins with spiritual awakening. The finding of God is a coming to one's own self. Patanjali's second aphorism: the mind of the truly illumined is calm because the peace of God within all things is known, even within the appearance of misery and disease. This second aphorism brings to mind the adage that the 3 truly difficult things to do in life are returning love for hate, including the excluded, and saying, "I was wrong." If it requires stillness to know God, then we need to be in a place of loving calmness in order to be able to have God's assistance in problem solving. But how do I get to that place of calmness? I believe you can move into that state of knowing God by intentionally choosing calmness in moments of anxiety or fear. Yes, you can choose to be calm at any moment by reminding yourself that you are no longer choosing to live by your conditioned past. You see your world in the terms of an infinite game. You will smile more frequently. You will feel serene. You will access spiritual solutions. The third aphorism of Patanjali: sin is non-existent. There are only obstacles to one's ultimate union with God. Most of us grew up believing that a sin was an act of disobedience or ingratitude toward a God who is both separate and punitive. Behavior which religion has taught us is sinful is conduct which is away from God. This, according to Patanjali, is not a reason to immerse ourselves in guilt and use up life energy attempting to somehow make amends. Rather, it should be viewed in the context of an obstacle that we have yet to overcome. The concept of being a sinner is an image of self-contempt and guilt, while the concept of encountering an obstacle is empowering. We have been trained to think in terms of sin and punishment. The empowering way is to view trials as lessons and opportunities to choose differently. The sinner, filled with guilt, becomes immobilized and remains in passive inertia. When we view the sinful behavior as an obstacle to a higher level of awareness, we can still take responsibility by asking ourselves, what is the lesson for me? And what can I do to avoid this the next time? Patanjali's fourth aphorism: the person who is steadfast in abstaining from falsehood has the power to obtain for himself and others the fruits of good deeds without having to perform the deeds themselves. Normally, when we use the word truthful, we imply that a person's words correspond to the facts of which he speaks. Yet in this Yoga Sutra, steadfast in abstaining from falsehood means something quite apart from being factual. What is meant here is the practice of completely and wholly identifying oneself as a spiritual being, united with God at all times, and never confusing one's identity with the ego world of possessions, achievements, and reputation. In this state, we find ourselves gaining those fruits of good deeds. They will enable us to not only resolve our own problems, but those of others as well. Open yourself to an idea which allows you to gradually remember your identity as a connected to God entity. The more steadfast you are in this regard, the more you will hear others say, "I just feel better when she is around. I feel calm when he shows up." You literally raise the consciousness of those around you. We begin to see the fruits of good deeds appearing without having to work at it. Ultimately, we are close to the top, and find that there are others just wanting to bathe a bit in our aura, so to speak. Let in this idea that you can access divine spiritual power to alleviate problems first for yourself, and then for others. And finally, Patanjali's fifth aphorism, my favorite. When a person is steadfast in his abstention from harming others, then all living creatures will cease to feel enmity in his presence. Patanjali's statement, abstention from harming others, includes not only actual acts of harm, but also thoughts of jealousy, judgment, and injury. Steadfastly renouncing violence in thoughts and in all dealings with others creates an atmosphere wherein violence and enmity ceases to exist because it is not reciprocated. Any situation where you experience anger or even mild discomfort involves thoughts of enmity toward the other person or people. Other people will not feel enmity or anguish if you steadfastly abstain from having harmful thoughts toward them in the first place. Amazing! By you working at not having any judgments or harmful thoughts, those around you will be free of anguish also. Problems are illusions of the material world. Solutions are attributes of your immersion in the world of spirit. As you face a problem, remind yourself that you created it with one mind, and you will solve it with another.
You have to understand there are some things that you believe, and there are some things that you know. Now, your knowings are different from your beliefs in that your beliefs are handed to you. Your knowings all come from within. Everything that you know because you got it yourself. No one handed it to you. Like I watched the Winter Olympic trials a while back, and when I was a young boy, I was going to become a professional ice hockey player, and I used to go skating every single day. And then I let go of that when I was 18, and went into the service and spent some years overseas and all of that, and came out and went through all of the things of my life. And I get to now where I'm 52 years old, and I'm watching the Winter Olympics with all of my children. And I say to my kids, we're all sitting there, and I say, yeah, I can do that. You see that Christy Yamaguchi over there? I can do those things. You can't do that, Dad. Come on. I said, yeah, I can do that. I used to be a great skater. I can twirl, and I can skate, and I can go backwards, and I can do figure eights and axles. I can do all of that stuff. I used to do all of that. Come on, Dad, you can't do that. I said, yeah, I can. I really can. So we have occasion to go to up into Massachusetts, and I'm putting on my ice skates after 34 years. Haven't been on skates in 34 years. Then I lace up the skates, and I'm getting ready to go out there and skate, and the kids are all like, oh, he's got to... And I go right out there, and within 15 seconds, I'm doing what I was doing 34 years ago. Skating, twirling, going backwards, doing all the things that were just second nature to me when I was growing up in Detroit, down on the Detroit River. And the interesting thing is that the body that knew how to do that in 1958 is dead. There's not one cell left in it. Yet the knowing is still there. I don't have the same brain. I have different cells. I don't have the same femurs. I don't have the same ankles. It's all different, replaced. And yet the knowing is still there. You see, a knowing is metaphysical in nature. Somehow, beyond the physical, transferred to the physical through some process that we can't even begin to comprehend. The knowings that you have in your life, like I know I can swim, I know I can dance, I know I can make love, I know I can walk, I know I can do all of these things that I have a knowing about, all came from within you, and all of the things that you believe in were handed to you. So consequently, Your knowings will never let you down in times of crisis, and your beliefs will almost always let you down in times of crisis. Those things that you believe in are handed to you, and those things that are handed to you come with doubt, because someone else is giving it to you. This is what you're supposed to believe, this is what you're supposed to do, this is how you do it. Yeah, that's great, and you're going to, but then there's a doubt attached to it. But that which you know isn't. Now, unfortunately, most of the things that we know as individuals also are in the area of what we know we can't do. We know what is impossible, what can't be done. So if I were to ask you, can you be in more than one place at the same time? Can your body be here, and can it be someplace else at the same time? You said, no, you can't do that. And if I said, well, could you transport yourself from here to, say, Montana or Spain just through the power of your mind? You'd say, no, you can't do things like that. If I said, well, can you enter someone else's dream? Go into dream consciousness from the waking, go into someone else's dream and become a character in their dream voluntarily. You'd say, no. Can you fly? If you come across a tree, can you jump over it? Can you levitate? There's a lot of things, and those are just some of the extremes. But I want to remind you of what one of our spiritual masters said to us through St. Paul. Even the least among you can do all that I have done, and even greater things. Even the least among you can do all that I have done, and even greater things. Just let that into your consciousness. Because now we're talking about someone who is changing shape and raising the dead and feeding the hungry through the gift of manifestation of fish and loaves. Changing water into wine. The ability to be able to create a miracle mindset for yourself is not available to you if doubt is in your consciousness, because what you think about is what expands. And if you have doubt, you will act on the doubt. You can't act on anything else. What you think about is what expands. The ancestor to every action is a thought. So if your thoughts are that this is not possible, that's what you will act on.